What's up, everyone? It's your boy VenomousStare, back with another first-person VOD, as I forgot to drop the volume down. Derp, derp, derp. So this is a first-person VOD. Basically, that just means we watch a game, a replay, from my point of view, and I talk about what I was thinking at the time, and kind of walk you through what I do in my games through my lens, through my vision. So this map is called Core Hall Carnage Knockout, and it is absolute dog shit for Protoss. Everywhere is open. Your third is way, way far away. Most of the times, whenever you spawn somewhere, you're like in a weird close positions type thing where your third is right on top of your opponent. It's a really, really bad map for Protoss. But I like to macro, so I'm going to try to fast expand. And as you can see, it's pretty much just a lot of fucking empty space. It's so bad. Now, a lot of these towers collapse. The problem is the Zerg can put pressure on you before the towers collapse, and if they do an all-in, they can just kill the towers anyway. So even if you open with units like a fast zealot or something and tried to get the tower down, it wouldn't even do you any good. And when I say tower, I mean these stupid things, these destructible, whatever the fuck they're called. So my build of choice this game was to build a Nexus, and then I built my pylon in a spot that was between my natural ramp and my Nexus. The reason I did that is because on awful maps with huge chokes, you need to build your pylon in a position where you can kind of half-ass wall in your main ramp, because oftentimes you'll be forced to give up your natural, or not necessarily give up your natural, but you'll be forced to defend your natural, and you don't want your opponent to be able to just run into your main, because when the natural ramp is this large, you can't really afford to build a backup ramp at the top of your natural ramp, if that makes sense, right here. You can't wall here because you dedicate all your resources to walling here, and that's what I tried to do. Now I will note that I'm going to try for an all-in this game because I don't consider this map like fair at all. So what I'm trying to do a +1 7-gate warp gate all-in. The idea being that I get +1 7 warp gates, and this is actually a 3 gas 7 gate, which is abnormal. I wanted to do kind of a tech heavy Century +1 7 gate. The idea being that I can't take a third realistically because the map is so Zerg favored. So I'm just going to chrono out my +1 and my warp gate. Notice this area is a wall in, so if the Zerg runs up through here, he can't get in. And I'm trying to establish a second part of my wall here. Also notice there's a high ground right here, so this is just another reason why this map is bad. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, destroy the rocks and take this base. It's just not feasible, guys. Like, you can't kill these rocks early on enough to take that base. If you want to take a natural, you have to take this one. So, as we can see, I'm starting to make my warp gates for my warp gate all-in. If you don't know when to do this, if you're new to the game, basically there's a few factors you can deduce to when there's a few factors you can use to deduce when to add more warp gates when you're playing Protoss. Also, obviously you want to double pump SCVs like the whole time. I hope everyone knows that already, but so whenever your money starts to get high, keeping in mind you're always producing SCVs, and whenever your research is about to finish, whenever your +1's about to finish, those are all signs that you should be adding your extra warp gates. And what do I see? Right at the wrong moment, right when I'm pushing out, 8 roaches show up at my front door. Pause. That's 10 roaches actually. I only have 1 online warp gate. Now because this map is so bad, it's so open, I can't really have my shit together. Keep in mind, if I wasn't doing a 7 gate, I would have built a cannon or two, but I don't have any intentions of macroing on this map, so I tried to cut a corner so I could get these gates faster, and I didn't build the 2 cannons. Against 10 roaches, 2 cannons, I mean, it's hard to say, but this guy hit the perfect timing on me. So let's see what I do here. I immediately fire up double pylons. I should have done this pylon. That was so stupid. So dumb. I thought I had enough energy for 3, and if I just did the 2, he would have just run around here. So I guess it really wasn't that stupid. Regardless, the point is there's nothing I could have done. In terms of what I had set up, because I only had energy for 2 overcharges. If I do these 2, he just runs around and kills this like he's doing already. If I do that one in the corner one, he has to commit first. Regardless, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing. So, look at this. Worst case scenario. I was doing an all-in. My opponent hit a perfect timing right before my all-in. And it wasn't, I guess it wasn't completely worst case scenario because he hit right as the warp gates were coming online and finishing, but it's still really bad because essentially he blind hard countered me. He pumped Roach Sling, which is the hard counter to a warp gate all in like this, and he hit me right in the mouth before I had any units. And if we go to his vision, I know this is a first person VOD, but he didn't scout me. This was just a fucking blind Roach Sling all in because this map is so Zerg favored, and my opponent was able to get away with it. He just took a risk without scouting. Kind of ironic coming from the Protoss player 7 gating, but you're really not supposed to be able to do that with Zerg, because if we accept the fundamental if we accept the fundamental principles of Protoss that has existed within Protoss for years since the game came out, that it's the race that can do all-ins without scouting and still be successful, then we need to, you know, I don't know. You either have to redefine Protoss completely and completely change the way you think about the game, or say that these maps are imbalanced, because there's really no way that Protoss can macro with Zerg on this map effectively. So right now I can't decide what I want to do. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. My opponent has 2 bases, maybe more. I really need to get more scouting information before I make a decision. But I kind of decide that I'm not going to be able to win if I just pump units, because he's known that I'm probably going to try to push him for so long, and I don't have the economy to reinforce. So at this point I'm just going to try to make a nexus, run around the map, kill overlords, scare the shit out of this guy, make him pump roaches, zerglings, and spines, and then pull back and hope to God that he's only on 2 bases. Normally, okay, this is a cute move. I try to do severe damage to these little towers that will fall down, these cooling towers. And the idea is to get my opponent to run right here in this choke. While I'm over here, I force field and kill these towers and their army dies. But that really will never work against anyone above like Gold League, because they just see the towers are low and don't chase you. A good Zerg won't chase into force fields. And here I think he has a third. I just assume he has a third. The idea was to do that obnoxious Protoss move where you just run up the ramp and force field, but he didn't have a third. So now I'm kind of thinking, because I've peeked over here, I'm kind of thinking, this guy is not actually as far ahead as I thought. But I see units go to my main. I'm going to try to run over and snipe his natural. However, I see that this little Zergling force is not the extent of his army. It's just a counterattack. Great move by him. So I have to recall there. This is exactly what you want to do as Zerg whenever your Protoss opponent is doing what I like to call sitting on the chest. Whenever your Protoss opponent is sitting on your chest, that just means that they have a sentry-heavy army with Mothership Core, and they're sitting at your front door, constantly threatening to do damage to you, but never really being under threat. Because the sentry obviously can force field, and the Mothership can recall. So anytime the Zerg runs at you with ground forces, you just force field away and recall, and there's really nothing Zerg can make at this point in the game that can kill my mothership core fast enough to be a risk. He's not going to run in with queens. He can't hit me with Ravager shots unless I'm an idiot. So that's one thing you should always aim to do to Zerg as Protoss, is sit on their chest. That's what I call it. Pressure with sentries and mothership cores. Especially when you're behind and your Zerg opponent can just make drones and win if you don't pressure him. That's the kind of situation I was in this game. My opponent had a base over me. I had very little to no tech, and it was 1 base to 2, and it could have possibly been more than that. That's why I was so aggressive this game with my army. Now, if you're a really good player and you can always watch your army, admittedly it doesn't really take that much skill, you should always be aiming to do this in the early and mid game against Zerg. There's no risk. As long as you can look at your army and the Zerg doesn't surround you. Speaking of which, not looking at my army, however I only was a Zealot. So the idea here was to push the Zerg. However, he's been pumping units the whole time and has not taken a third. This means that because of his advantage that he garnered earlier in the game, I will not be able to kill his army. So what I should do is pull back, make a tech building, and take a third. And that's what it looks like I'm going to do. Also notice over here I tried to warp in, but I wasn't familiar with the map. There were rocks here, so now these Zealots are going to derp out and go all the way around. So this is another thing that you should do as Protoss whenever you're trying to get back in the game. This you should do. A lot of these concepts, by the way, you should do all the time, but a lot of them work especially well when you're trying to claw your way back into a very close game. This harass, of course, fucked up. However, this harass, it was mismicroed, but my opponent still pulled his entire army back to deal with it. And you might say, well, Wiley, your opponent's fucking garbage. Your opponent's bad, that's why he pulled his whole army back. And I'd like to counter that by saying, whenever you do stuff in StarCraft 2, whenever you do actions that force your opponent to commit to a reaction, you always put them in a position to make a mistake. And that's one of the linchpin ideas you should have when you play StarCraft. Even if you do silly little things, they're like, oh, one Zealot here, one Zealot there. If there's a chance it'll make your opponent fuck up, like that micro, which was awful, by the way. Talking about myself, of course. Then that's a good thing. That's something you should aim to do. You should always aim to put roadblocks in the way for your opponent. That means having a Zealot at empty bases. That means making a warp prism whenever you can to give yourself the opportunity to harass. There's lots of things you can do in this game to harass your opponent, to force them to make mistakes. And you should always be doing them. Especially when you're behind. That's a big concept in this video, is we got way behind, it was 2 bases to 1, we failed an all-in. What do we do to get back? So, obviously you don't want to waste Chrono Boost. And I should have reappropriated my Chrono Boost onto a Warp Gate here, actually. Because I wasn't researching anything else. Or actually a Nexus would have been good too, but the new Chrono system it's easier for Protoss, but it's really bad in my opinion. Because whenever you have to reallocate your Chronos, usually whenever you do it, it fucks up other ones. So, force fields to cut the army in half here, but this is what sucks about playing Legacy of the Void. Is Zergs will just build Ravagers after they build Roaches and really, really fuck up your defensive advantage. Despite the fact that I had an Immortal army with Stalkers and decent upgrades, which is very good against his composition, minus the Ravagers, he was able to trade effectively. That was all down to the Ravager. In the heart of the Swarm and in Wings of Liberty, as Protoss, you could cut your Zerg opponent's army in half with force field and do severe damage to it and come out ahead almost every single time. Now in Legacy of the Void, Zerg can make Ravagers, which allows them to use the ability on top of your army, which can't move back because you're playing defensively, can't move forward because then you nullify the effect of your force fields, because then you're just standing in range of everything, even the stuff that you partitioned off. So I really dislike playing against Ravagers. Big pain in the ass unit. And if your opponent's smart and has enough of a backbone of a roach, even making zealots won't really do the job. Even speed zealots with legs, which, as Zerg players know, are extremely powerful. I've established this little third base up here, which whenever you play maps with really bad thirds that are really difficult to defend, just expand away from your opponent and try to put pressure on him. Because right now, the thing that I have to worry about is him pressuring my front door. And if he catches wind of those bases in the corners, I'm in an extremely vulnerable situation because they're somewhat difficult to defend. Okay, this is groundbreaking. I've scouted his corner bases and now it makes sense. He has hidden bases. That's how he stayed in the game. That's how he stayed in the game. That's how his army is so big. This is a big mistake by me, not having zealots in the corners. Oftentimes people make this mistake and allow their opponents to hide bases. You should really never do this. Although, notice this zealot is on a patrol command. This is the guy that I warped in to check for hidden bases. So I would have organically found those bases regardless of whether that probe went up to the third. So not completely terrible by me, but I should have done that earlier. Another thing that a lot of new players will probably not be able to do, but if you're in the higher levels, you might be able to do this. This requires a lot of judgment. Whenever your opponent does a build that is aggressive and you seemingly fall behind, or they seemingly fall behind, and they continue to stay in the game, seemingly a long time, like, oh shit, they just won't die, you need to consider they probably have a hidden base, and you need to make it a priority to go look for hidden bases. It's not hard. Just make a zealot, zergling, or marine, hit A, hit left, or hold down shift, hit A, and left click around the mini-map, and that will send your unit on an attack command of multiple locations. You don't have to send an attack command to one base. Oh shit, check again. You know, run over, check the other base. No, it's just one command, shift A, click the mini-map, and you can check all the bases. So, about 5 minutes ago I made a Twilight Council so I could continue to get upgrades. The reason there was chrono, see that red line? That's the shift A move command I was referring to. Whenever you get 111 upgrades as Protoss, you should always make it a priority to get a Twilight. Because even whenever you're recovering from behind, once you get, you can obviously delay and get 111, but after that, you need to commit to a Twilight. Upgrades are important. Notice right there I flew my Warp Prism in and clicked on whatever building he was making. I needed to know what he was doing, and it was an infestation pit, which is indicative of hive play or infestors. So we're just going to turn on everyone for a second. Look at that. He diverts his whole army. I kill the Lurker Den, but he mismicros a bit here. I mean, okay, this isn't a mismicro. Basically, he's saying, shit, I can't defend that. Oh, no, okay, I see what he did now. I just played this game. I haven't watched this replay. And notice I take a fourth. He thought that it was just the Zealots. He saw his Lurker Den die. He killed the Harass, and then he went back to counterattack. This is something that you can get your opponent to do all the time. This is why when you harass with the Warp Prism, you should do Zealots and Dark Templar. Because so often whenever you're doing other things on the map, your opponent can't see what's going on very well, because Dark Templar are invisible, obviously, so they see their base dying quickly. They think, oh, fucking Protoss units, and they send some Hydras over there to defend, kill the Zealots. Oh, the harass is over. Then they look in their base and see their shit still dying. Oh, big surprise, there's Dark Templar. That's why you should mix High Templar and Zealots together. So here, I walk in the middle of the map because I know that he's trying to attack my base. He has a pretty big army, and he has Lurkers, so I have to recall. Lurkers are very strong. I did not do a very good job focus firing because so much of his army was flanking. It would have been Gosu if I could have predicted his movement, killed this tower, and partitioned the army off that way, but I hadn't even considered this tower could still be this weak. Keep in mind, you can fucking kill this and then destroy the rocks. So he killed a lot of my army mid-map with his lurkers, but I'm going to harass in the meantime. I know he's going to push this base and kill it, and I can't do a damn thing. My only hope is to defend this base with recall. So I get my army together, I get my shit together, and I recall to this corner base while I harass with Dark Templar across the map. I've killed his infestation pit, which is really the only thing he had going for him. So I recalled up to my pivotal third base. If I lose this, I lose the game. Keep in mind my Zerg opponent has to charge up this ramp, or he has to just pull back. There's no other alternative route to attack. I should have killed these rocks a long time ago. That was a mistake. It was my first time playing this map. This is why Dark Templar is so strong. If your opponent is caught off guard, or you're playing a very scrappy game, which is what this is, Dark Templar do a lot of damage because in scrappy games you cut corners. 2 immortals here. If I lose these, the fight will be very hard to win. A smart player would have killed these rocks, but I'm inexperienced on the new map, so I was forced to recall. That means that I have less energy to put an overcharge down. And my Zerg opponent is going to put lurkers down. Thankfully, only one will survive. This is just a product of him not having enough bases. He was ahead for so long and took effective trades for so long, but he just ran out of steam. He pretty much had a better army than me for the entirety of the game. Notice he's still in this game, so I sent a Dark Templar to these bases. Miss Micro here obviously should have been attacking, but I've cleaned out his main and his natural. Miss Micro, yeah, see, there you go. See, there's that Shift A move command I was talking about. And at this point, as long as he doesn't have a lot of hidden bases, I'm fine. I fixed my Dark Templar that was slightly off-queued, and my opponent is going to try to push here. 5 immortals, look at that. Whenever you face ground Zerg, it's very important to constantly produce units out of whatever your money structure is. Money structure being your first important tech choice. In this case, my first important tech choice was a 7-gate, but in the instance of this analogy, it was the Robo. So basically what I'm saying is whenever you go Robo, throw a chrono on the thing and make sure that you never let your macro slip and let that Robo go idle, because whenever you're playing against ground styles, it's very difficult to defend against them without Robo units. If you enjoyed, if you learned, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter.